Okay, can I start?
Yep.
Okay. My topic is how the Chinese economy is gradually declining. What did you call it, John?
After the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I said Paper Tiger,
Paper Tiger, yes.
Fading Dragon.
Excellent. Paper Tiger, Fading Dragon. John said it better than I can. The Chinese economy grew at astounding rates, starting with Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms in 1992 until the accession of power of Xi Jinping in 2012. Deng based his economic plan on the encouragement of foreign direct investment. Thank you. The creation of special economic zones, or EEZs, where foreign firms build factories to make consumer goods with low-wage labor. Acquiring foreign technology, modernized China, allowing farmers to grow food on government-owned but privately farmed plots to sell in the marketplace at a profit. The encouragement of individuals to set up private businesses for profit, which made China the number 2 economy in the world by the mid-1990s. With the accession of Xi Jinping as China's president, this economic expansion has come to an end. Even before Xi Jinping, the Chinese economy developed severe economic problems which damaged its society. These problems are 1. Excessive debt. 2. Banks and financial stress. 3. Real estate crisis. 4. Demographic decline. 5. Economic inequality. 6. Environmental crisis. 7. And the policies of Xi Jinping, which damaged the investor class. It created problems with the investor class. There are 2 types of corporations in China. SOEs, state-owned enterprises. These state-owned enterprises are in central control center banking, energy, telecommunications, aerospace, defense, machine tools, steel, shipbuilding, cement making. 2, private companies that engaged in consumer goods, electronic, food, travel, and tourism. The SOEs, state-owned enterprises, operated by members of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, were party leaders on the provincial level, and local party leaders. These individuals used the control of the SOEs to enrich themselves. This can be done in 3 ways. 1, embezzlement, where party bosses steal money by loans to the party bosses from the SOEs and their subordinates, which they never pay back. CP bosses and their subordinates claim phony expenses. 2, sale of SOE assets to private businessmen. The businessmen paid huge bribes, over 100,000 yuan, to buy SOE assets at low prices. They sell them at high prices. And if you want to get promoted in the Chinese Communist Party, you got to bribe everybody. Yeah, it's all bribery. And to get to the top position, you got to bribe everybody. So, and at high prices. And the value of the yuan is 7.2370 to the dollar.
Is that my
Now, if it would float freely, it would be like 4. But the Chinese government doesn't want it to float freely.
It's been like that since the 80s. I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there in the 88, maybe 9.
7.23?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, is that you talking about the FECs or the renminbi? They also had
It's
two kinds of money.
Yeah.
The renminbi for the local people
Yeah.
and the foreign exchange
I'm
system.
talking about the yuan.
Yuan.
Okay. 3, transfer of SOE executive positions to private businessmen or relatives of the CCP party bosses. Private businessmen made huge bribes to attain the positions. Businessmen and relations of the officials used their position to embezzle money from the SOEs. As a result of the looting of the SOEs, these corporations have no money. State-owned banks are forced to lend SOEs vast sums of money. The SOEs cannot repay these loans. The loans are non-profit loans. These loans are not listed on the bank's ledgers of assets and liabilities. State firms account for 1/4 of the economy, but they were borrowed 60% of corporate debt. By 2015, SOEs banned debt borrowed debt equivalent to 163% of the size of the Chinese economy. Loans to SOEs are made from the savings of ordinary people who deposit their money in state-owned banks, like they have a choice. As more and more companies fail to repay their loans, at some point the government needs to bail out the system so citizens can get their money back, which they don't. And there were times when the banks recently didn't give their money back in certain provinces, and there were riots, which was suppressed by the police.
I've seen that firsthand.
Yes. Okay. Banks have three options. One, banks and companies are allowed to fail at the expense of jobs and pensions. Two, the PRC can raise taxes and issue government bonds to bail them out, where the public foots the bill. Three, government allows inflation to eat away at the size of these loans and the value of people's savings. Now, there's a contradiction here because there's deflation. So this idea of inflation isn't happening. There is deflation now. The prices are going down. A lot of people don't want to buy goods, and people are going from Hong Kong to mainland China to buy things because it's cheaper in mainland China than in Hong Kong. Xi Jinping will not allow the banks to fail. The government will sell bonds and SOEs, and banks give them bailouts. Nobody's buying the bonds. Very few. Raising taxes is an option, and taxes, well, I'd say the CCP members are buying the bonds. Private investors, no. Raising taxes is an option, and taxes have been used to be raised on the middle class. Inflation is not an option because China is currently in a deflation cycle. Chinese consumers are not buying because they're waiting for the prices to go down further. Private companies cannot get loans from state-owned banks. They must rely on private financial institutions. One common financial institution is peer-to-peer lending platform. Peer-to-peer lending platforms, or P2P. P2P uses the internet to link people who need loans with people who are willing to lend the money. A small firm can borrow what it needs from dozens or even hundreds of ordinary people who can contribute money. Another illegal financial institution, none of them illegal, that has developed in the investment corporation companies. These investment companies offer high interest rates, 2.5% per month. Many private business companies use these banks to obtain loans as one would lend, where no one would lend the money. But these are companies. There's always a risk that these entrepreneurs cannot repay the loans. When they go bankrupt, the state steps in to prosecute them for illegal fundraising. An example is, and this is by a man that wrote about the debt, the tremendous debt that China has. I'll mention his name in a moment. Wu Ying had built a nail salon into a conglomerate of nail salons. She was unable to repay 380 million yuan debt. Wu Ying was prosecuted for financial fraud and illegally taking deposits from the public. She was sentenced to death, but the People's Supreme Court overturned the death sentence because there was not a public demand. She got a life sentence. Yu Ling, who has stated, again from that book I told you about, his name is Denny McMahon. Denny McMahon, who wrote a book about debt, The Great Wall of Debt. Denny McMahon, who speaks fluent Mandarin and lived in China and grew up there as a teenager. Okay, it is danger at the time when lending to small firms is too dangerous. At the time when the economy is slowing down and you're adding additional leverage to a company, that's a dangerous thing to do. You lend to consumers instead of investors to pay back. So you're a small company, you ain't getting the money. In China, your typical private business keeps 3 sets of books. One for the banker, one for the tax authorities, and one accurate for himself. None of these people of the Jewish faith. I remember Jewish comedians I remember Mousy Lawrence, a Jewish comedian, said, an Italian-American comedian who he was on what was it? He was in a Broadway play, and he said, "Next to my life, I'm coming back Jewish. 2 sets of dishes, 3 sets of books." And this makes it impossible for banks to trust the borrower. It is also becoming more difficult to find people willing to lend money over the internet. Yuling wealth management product by February 2014 had so many people flocking to his website that he did not have enough vetted borrowers. You have to be vetted also, these guys, to accommodate them. Every time he positioned the loan, sold it in seconds, Yuling did not have enough loans to post it on the internet and the portal. That's an example of how difficult it is for private business people, I should say, it's men and women, to get loans. A major problem with private companies is the hostility of the CCP towards private business. Government often tries to put them out of business. Danny McMahon, in his book China's Great Wall of Debt, that's where I'm getting my sources from, gave several examples of government harassment of private business. Wu Ha, a CEO of a chain of mid-tier hotels, he has had 65 hotels and wanted to build 50 more across 30 cities. Wu had to deal with China's bureaucracy, where he dealt with 1,000 different officials to bribe them. From the tax collectors to fire safety, Danny McMahon wrote of a finance company that had been expropriated by a local government. The partners had their cell phones confiscated. They were instructed to sell their company at a fraction of the market value. The 3 companies owned by the CCP party officials. You don't sell, you end up in a concentration camp.
That's one hell of a fire sale.
Huh?
That's one hell of a fire sale.
Yeah, exactly. Danny McMahon gave an example of a small business in 2013. He opened a bookstore. He spent 4 months getting dozens of papers, stamped with official seals, to open his business. That's the bribe them. Inspectors came in and accused him of creating a light pollution because of the window or glass that was the wrong color, and he couldn't fix it. They're there not only to harass the Filipinos, but to steal their fish.
And they're also spy ships in disguise.
Right.
You see them at the H Mart, all these different living sea creatures.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure they get them from Chinese fishing vessels. Okay. Chinese companies build agricultural land, including U.S. farmland, to import food into China. What's advertised in the United States is they use this land to put them in military bases they can spy, which is true, but the land is designed to grow food and send it to China, and they go to many other countries like Brazil or South America, African countries. They buy up the land, they buy the food, and they send it to China because they can't grow their own. Which means they got to have more merchant ships, and they build more cruisers and destroyers to protect their merchant fleets. And they want more bases. And they want to acquire more bases, not only for military purposes, but so that their ships can ship the food out. Deforestation. 14% of China's land mass is forest land. 1.3 million cubic meters of forest land are used to make disposable chopsticks. China's furniture industry is 90% of the world's market. 50% of China's forests have disappeared due to industry, floods, soil erosion, mudslides, destruction of rivers. While the PRC government has kept the policy of reforestation, it is difficult with droughts and temperatures change at higher elevations. Desertification. Overgrazing of grassland by enormous flocks of sheep and goats creates deserts, especially in the northwest of the country, with desert lands and devouring farmland, homes, and towns. 2 deserts in the Inner Mongolia, Gansu province, are merging into one desert. Desertification began at Mao Zedong in the 1950s, where grassland was turned into crop fields, which turned topsoil into dust. During the Cultural Revolution, desertification accelerated, where city people with no knowledge of farming planted crops, killing the soil. Soil salinization is another factor of desertification. With desertification, China cannot have enough grain to feed its population. China must import grain, which affects imports the GDP. Political ideology becomes for economic profit, and that's even more so now. The consensus among economists is that China needs to, 1, adopt market economics, 2, eliminate SOEs, solvent for private investors, 3, banks must loan money to private businesses, 4, allow the yuan to float freely, which would stabilize the currency, 5, allow the stock market to be based on market economics. Xi Jinping is opposed to all of these reforms. According to Steve Tsang and Oliver Chung, in their book, which was published recently, The Political Thought of Xi Jinping, Xi said in 2017, the party, the state, the military, the civilians, and the education sector, east, west, south, north, center, the party leads everything. Xi insists that the state and the party controls the economy. Xi wants a Leninist party state with himself at the top. He calls his party socialism with Chinese characters. Direct state control over the economy means SOEs dominate industry. Underperforming SOEs are put under new management, a few are allowed to go bankrupt, and new funding from banks. SOEs would continue to take over private businesses. Banks would not give loans to private businessmen. Xi Jinping wants the SOEs to concentrate on developing advanced technology. 6G, AI, robotics, EVs, electric vehicles, and biomedicine. These innovations would make China independent from foreign support. Also, they want to make chips also, computer chips. To pay for this policy, Xi arranged for the government-funded funds, government-guided funds. These are funds raised by the central, provincial, and county governments, as well as private industry, private individuals. These funds never raised enough money to, 1, failure to attract private capital. Nobody wants to buy them. 2, Xi's policies of cracking down on campaigning with local government discourage investment. They're not buying them either. They don't have any money. Xi wants to encourage scientific community to engage in innovations to create new technologies. There are 4 problems. Problem 1, most career academics focus on publications and conferences which detract them from research. 2, the innovation system is fragmented where fundamental and applied research are disjointed from mechanisms to transform research findings into commercial applications. Very weak. 3, the PRC decided in 2022 to close all private tutoring schools. These private schools were filled with middle-class students who took classes in math, science, and English. They never taught anything that would threaten the party. These students received advanced knowledge in these subjects, which enabled them to enter universities and graduate as high-tech engineers. By closing down these schools, which the government did not control, the government deprived young people of the opportunity to become high-tech engineers, which create new technologies. And again, this is political control over the economy. 4, massive high-tech academics studying in Western universities, especially in the United States. In the USA, these graduate students were able to experiment and innovate without PRC government interference. Upon graduation, some of them newly minted PhDs returned to China, work in PRC research labs, and these are the ones that are trying to advance the technology and have exports of technology. The majority preferred to stay in the USA because they could research in freedom and command huge salaries and obtain salaries in China. The news media, especially the right-wing news media, concentrate on these people that get the American technology, they steal them and they go back to China, which they did, but most of them want to stay here. Xi Jinping's policies are encouraging the growth of SOEs into international firms because of the expense of private business. Under Xi Jinping's mixed ownership reforms, SOEs are encouraged to buy up private companies and controlling shares in private companies. Eventually, private firms are merged into SOEs. This allows SOEs to obtain funds from private companies. Another method to constrain private business is to force firm executives to complete a process of self-education where executives must admit guilt for the disorderly expansion of capital. Didn't they do this under Mao Zedong?
Yeah, history repeated
Yeah.
itself.
To complete this process, the firms must donate millions of yuan to social welfare funds to benefit the poor, which ends up in the pockets, of course, the CPP.
Kind of like the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, right. Xi Jinping also used force to control private tech conglomerates. In October 2020, Jack Ma, CEO of Alibaba, which sold a lot of consumer goods and became an international company, made a fortune, criticized government regulation of high-tech sector. On November 3rd, 2020, the PRC government suspended the firms of $37 billion or IPO. Jack Ma was put under house arrest for several months. So was Pony Ma, head of Xiaoming, which is also his competitor. And a lot of them were put in house arrest. That's like if you imagine Donald Trump or Joe Biden putting Warren Buffett or Elon Musk under house arrest. I mean,
Then they wouldn't get their contribution.
yeah. This attack on private businesses extended to foreign firms. PRC officials periodically raided foreign firms and accused them of tax evasion, making poor quality products, not adhering to government regulations. This practice encouraging foreign companies from investing in China. A new method of harassing foreign firms is the exit ban. Companies which are involved in civil litigation have their executives prohibited from leaving China. Even foreign nationals who have left the company or not potentially liable are prohibited from leaving the country. These people have no idea when they can leave. This will encourage foreign workers, people from working in China. Conclusion. The economic decline of China has several consequences. One, many upper middle class Chinese are taking their money out of the country. They're sending it to Hong Kong, where it's moved to foreign countries. They go to Canada, Australia, and the wealthy are immigrating too. Middle and upper class Chinese send their children to Western countries where they obtain a university education and local citizenship. Their parents leave China, move to the USA, UK, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, and number one destination, Singapore, where that would be a libertarian. Well, no, it's not a libertarian paradise. Too much restriction. But economically, they would.
It is economically.
Sitting on the sidewalk.
Even lower class people know that the economy is going to hell.
Oh, they have a whole village in the island of Samos.
Yeah.
A Chinese village in the island of my mother-in-law, Samos.
Yeah.
Which is, across from Turkey. They can hear the roosters crowing from Turkey right
Sure.
across.
That I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lower class Chinese are fleeing China, risking their lives or going through the Darien jungle in Panama to come to the USA. ICE confirmed over 39 Chinese males of military age coming to China illegally to the US. Now, most of these young men flee to China to avoid military service and in search of jobs not available in China. To listen to Fox, they're all soldiers. They're all going to
The other
fight.
story is
But
these
the
are-
reality is, they're running away from China. They don't want to serve in the military. Xi Jinping now is creating like draft boards, trying to get people in. You're saying, go ahead.
The same thing, they say a lot of these Chinese military-age males are coming across the border unvetted to set up like a fifth column or whatever it is, or they're just trying to escape their own homeland.
Some of them are,
So it's
but
probably
most of
both.
them want out.
Just want out, right?
Yeah, they're not soldiers. Foreign businesses are pulling out of China. These firms are moving to India and Vietnam, where the government does not harass business. Apple is building a new factory to move iPhones to China, make iPhones in China. 5, foreign direct investment is drying up in China. Foreign banking and companies fear that the US-China trade and geopolitical conflicts and government harassment of private businesses make it dangerous to invest in China. The future of China is not good. There's a consensus among economists and financial about the Chinese economy. The Chinese economy will slowly decline over a period. And then there'll be sudden changes due to the real estate crisis, banking crisis, and other pandemic. This will create chaos in the global economy, and instead of investing in social welfare programs with the economy, Xi Jinping is putting his money in the military and preparing for war.
Invading Taiwan, right?
And he thinks, well, I can attack the United States and Japan and all these, and they won't fight back. Well, famous last words.
Yeah. Is there any comprehension in China among its intellectual class, such as it is, or political leaders, that there's been a fundamental oxymoronic contradiction between real free market or any kind of true market economy versus
those individuals, John, have been silenced. They either end up in concentration camps.
Re-education camp.
Well, excuse me, you're right. What's your first name?
Mike Callahan.
Mike is right. Re-education camps, not concentration.
I've been
They end up in
there.
re-education camps. Mike is right here. They're silenced. They're afraid to open their mouths. And you have the surveillance state. So Xi Jinping figures, I can get away with all this with the face recognition cameras. He can get away with all this.
Social credits.
Yeah. Anyone else have?
And how is Joe Biden's investment in China? Do you think he sold this out to them, or is that just another media story?
These people, he wants investment. He's sending Yellen, and Yellen's telling the Chinese, "Oh, don't manufacture all this cheap stuff. They're not going to buy it." And they think she's an idiot. They're ignoring her. And you have these businessmen, according to, they're kissing the ring. They probably, you can't use the real language. They're kissing their rear ends, but they can't say that on TV because of the FCC. They're kissing their rings, but the reality is these people are idiots because you can't trust the communists. They invest in the country, they'll take it away from them. And if they take it away from them, the mutual funds will lose money, which means that I'm a teacher, I'm getting retired pension, I'll lose money.
The whole thing about the Communist Party is they own everything. They control anything.
That's
so
right.
How can people, you can't even buy it. When I was there in the 80s, you didn't own
Guys, we
anything.
have 7 minutes, okay?
Okay, we're going to leave. So, I mean, these are things that the Democratic and Republican Party can never do. And the Libertarian Party would want to round these people
Sir,
up and propose this
I
and
need
shoot
you to
them. Because they
sign.
believe
Please.
this would never happen under a Libertarian
Yeah,
government.
I have
You
it done.
think
You
that's
need
what's
to-
coming to America? I mean, it
You need
seems
to
like
sign it
full
for me,
full
please.
bore heading for total communism in this country.
Yeah, we're having the dictatorship. I remember when my father was living, he died in 1980. He said the way things are going with the federal government, and he was not a libertarian, he said they're preparing the people for communism. And my father said that before he died in 1980. He would tell me in the 70s. He was a businessman. He owned like paper supplies.
I saw that coming when I came back from Beijing. in
Oh,
89.
sure. You would,
This is-
Mike, you would know
I've
better
seen
than
it
me
firsthand.
because you saw it.
Yeah, here's my first question. Communism and fascism. Communism, the government controls all the industries. Fascism, the industries control the government. What is the
Sorry about
difference?
that.
They both end up in totalitarian nightmares and,
Right.
and millions
So
of deaths.
are we